It started as a promotion I didn't even apply for. I was a junior systems analyst making about $52K a year, stuck in a cubicle farm so deep in the middle of the building that I couldn't tell if it was day or night without checking my phone. My name's Kevin, and I'd been working for this mid-sized tech firm for about 16 months when the email came in. Congratulations on your new position, floor coordinator, level 9. No interview, no heads up. Just a forwarded note from HR, a new ID badge with level 9 access, and a salary bump to $78K. That kind of raise doesn't just fall in your lap. Naturally, I accepted. There was just one problem. I didn't know there was a 9th floor. Our office tower was supposed to have 8. All the elevators had buttons from G to 8. No 9. I figured maybe it was a secured annex, something for compliance or legal. Maybe the 9th floor wasn't for everyone. Still, my badge worked on one of the restricted elevators. When I scanned it that Monday morning, the panel blinked and the number 9 lit up in pale blue. The doors closed. It was dead silent inside. I didn't feel the elevator moving, but after maybe 30 seconds, the doors opened again. The 9th floor didn't look like the others. There was no open office layout, no chatter, no flickering LED lights. Everything was gray, floor, walls, ceiling. Even the lights were muted, dimmer than the ones below. My office was a windowless room with a desk, a file cabinet, a rotary phone, and an old computer that looked like it belonged in a museum. The screen glowed green, text only, no mouse, no internet, just one program that opened automatically when I powered it on, Review PRG. Each day, my task was the same, go through hundreds of incident reports. These weren't company issues, though. They were strange. One read, employee 213 found talking to his reflection in the glass, claimed it answered. Another said, intern 467 tried to remove something from the wall in meeting room 3. Not sure what, she's been nonverbal since. At first, I thought they were fiction, maybe creative writing training exercises, but the names were real. I recognized a few from the building directory. Guy Thomas from facilities was listed in an entry that said, subject reported seeing someone under his desk after hours. No one was found. He resigned the next day. I passed him in the hallway that week. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. After the 3rd day, I tried to bring it up to HR. I didn't mention the reports directly, just said I was unsure about the job responsibilities. The woman I met with smiled too widely, then said, "You've been doing a great job, Kevin." Don't overthink it. When I asked about the floor itself, she lowered her voice. Some people aren't meant to work there. You are. That's not nothing. I left more confused than when I arrived. By week 2, the reports started referencing me. Not by name, but by ID number 792. One file read, new subject assigned to level 9, observations pending. Another said, subject 792 paused on floor 7 during elevator transit. Exposure window 8.4 seconds, further review advised. I hadn't stopped on floor 7, at least I didn't think I had, but the reports kept building. They described behaviors I didn't remember doing, standing still for long periods, humming tuneless songs, walking in circles. I checked the building's surveillance system one night. My level 9 badge gave me full access, and sure enough, there I was in the footage from Monday, standing in front of the bathroom mirror for 17 minutes, smiling the entire time. I don't remember that at all. I stopped sleeping. Every night I heard the rotary phone in my office ringing in my dreams. When I answered it, no one spoke, just breathing, heavy, labored. Once I heard a voice whisper, "Look up." I woke up in a panic and found myself staring at the ceiling above my bed, eyes wide open. I hadn't even realized I opened them. That's when I noticed the mold, perfect circles forming in the corner of the ceiling, shaped like fingerprints pressed from the other side. I started coming in late, hopping to avoid using the elevator alone. But the stairs only went to floor 8. I even asked security if the floor was part of an expansion or new build. The guard, an older guy with a lazy eye, just said, "You people don't last long up there." He wouldn't elaborate. On the 12th day, I arrived to find a sticky note on my desk, handwritten, my name on it, just Kevin. Underneath it said, "Stop accessing level 9 after 7 p.m. They notice." I had no idea who left it. Security footage showed no one entering or exiting during the night. I should have quit. I know that now, but the money, the ease. Nobody was bothering me, even if the job was weird. I was bringing in nearly $6,500 a month. My student loans were disappearing. I was saving up for a car for once. The fear didn't outweigh the gain, yet 2 nights later I stayed late, just until 7:20 to finish a batch of flagged reports that the system wouldn't let me postpone. When I called the elevator, it opened to reveal a hallway instead. Not a car, an actual hallway stretching out, lined with closed doors. No lights at the end, just a vanishing point. My badge vibrated, not audibly. I felt it, like a phone set to silent in my pocket. I backed away, hit the down button again, and this time the elevator looked normal. I rode in silence to ground level, then took a cab home. That night my apartment felt wrong, warmer than usual. My fridge door was slightly ajar. I hadn't been in the kitchen. A post-it note had been placed on my bathroom mirror. Same handwriting, "It's following you." I didn't sleep. The next day I tried to quit. I handed in my resignation letter. My manager, who I'd never even met in person, just laughed. "That's cute," he said. "You don't resign from level 9, you just disappear." Then he got up and left the conference room, leaving the paper on the table. I stood there alone for 5 minutes before the lights flickered and shut off entirely. When they came back on, the paper was gone, so was my ID badge. That evening my phone buzzed with a notification. Deposit received, 15K. No sender info, just the money. I used a VPN and tried to transfer it to an external account. The transfer failed. The funds vanished. When I called the bank, the rep said there was no record of such a deposit, but my screen had screenshots, time-stamped, proof. She said, "Sir, your account's been locked due to multiple failed logins. We'll need to reset your credentials." I hadn't tried to log in before that call. Now I don't work there anymore, not officially, but I still get the reports. They come by mail, thick manila envelopes with no return address. Inside, pages of printed entries, time-stamped and labeled, each one about me. I haven't worked a real job in 3 months, but the reports say otherwise. Subject 792 was seen entering meeting room 9 with 2 unknown associates. Subject 792 attempted access to file storage room, was denied, exhibit B attached. The exhibits are photos, security footage, blurry but clear enough to show my face. Always in that gray hallway, always heading toward a door that isn't marked. Sometimes I wake up and my shoes are damp. Sometimes I smell the elevator's mechanical grease when I haven't left the house. I've moved twice. I've changed my phone number. But every month, without fail, I get a fresh deposit in my checking account, $6,500 like clockwork, and each time I find a new note under my door. The last one said, "See you soon. Room 907 is ready." I don't know what they want from me, but I think maybe I never left the 9th floor. Maybe part of me is still there, typing up reports about the rest of me, watching, waiting, recording, and the worst part, I'm still cashing the checks. I never thought I'd end up in data entry. I had a degree in literature and had planned to teach, maybe write a book if I could ever finish one. But the world doesn't really care about your intentions when the rent's due. My name is Allison, and when I got hired as a temp for Central Business Systems, I told myself it was just a stepping stone, something temporary, 6 months max. That was 2 years ago. The job itself wasn't bad, just repetitive. We sat in rows of gray cubicles like battery hens, typing invoice numbers into an old SAP system for 8 hours a day. No windows, no plants, not even music. Everything was beige. The lights buzzed, the coffee was burnt, and the people quiet, not unfriendly, just worn down, like the job scraped off bits of your personality every day until nothing was left but polite smiles and coffee breath. Cubicle 6C was empty when I started. It sat 2 spots down from me in 6A. The chair was pushed in and the monitor was turned off. I assumed the employee had been laid off or transferred. Nobody sat there for weeks, but the weird thing was the desk always seemed used. Pens moved around, post-it notes appeared. Once I saw a coffee ring on the desk, fresh, not dusty. It wasn't just me noticing either. Carla in 6B mentioned it one day. She said, "You ever wonder why they don't reassign 6C?" I laughed and said maybe it was cursed. She didn't laugh back. Then without announcement, someone started working there. It was a man, maybe mid-40s, thin, with graying hair and hollow cheeks. He never introduced himself, never smiled, never joined the rest of us in the break room. His name wasn't in the company directory, and when I asked HR, they acted confused. "That desk is unassigned," they told me. I said, "But someone's there every day." The woman on the phone paused, then said, "Are you sure? Cubicle 6C has been inactive for some time." Then she hung up. That night I stayed late. I told myself I had a backlog to clear, but I just wanted to watch. The man showed up around 6:45 p.m. He walked straight to the cubicle, sat down, turned on the monitor, and started typing. His screen glowed a faint blue, but it wasn't the SAP system. It looked like a blank command prompt, just blinking text. I leaned out of my cubicle to try and see what he was doing. That's when he stopped typing. His head didn't move, but his hand did, slowly raising until it pointed at me. I froze. Then he turned the monitor off, stood up, and walked away without a word. I didn't hear his footsteps. The carpet was thin, but still. There should have been sound. I packed up and left. The next morning, 6C was empty again. The chair was turned slightly toward my cubicle, like it had been watching. Over the next week, things escalated. Files on my computer disappeared, only to reappear with slight changes, names altered, dates wrong. I'd get emails from people in the office that they swore they never sent. One message said, "Don't let him in after hours." It was from Carla's address. She said she'd never written it. Then Carla stopped showing up. No notice, no goodbye. Her cubicle was cleared out by the time I got in the next morning. I asked HR. They said she quit. I asked why. They said they couldn't disclose personal decisions, but her coffee mug was still in the dishwasher. Her cardigan still draped over her chair. People don't quit like that. Cubicle 6C, of course, remained unassigned. Then came the voicemail. It was left on my work phone after hours, timestamped 2:11 a.m. A voice, raspy, distant, said, "You shouldn't have looked at him. You shouldn't know he's there." I played it twice. The second time, the last few words distorted into a low static that hurt my ears. I took my phone to it. The text said the voicemail file didn't exist. It had auto-deleted. But when I went back to my desk, the phone blinked again, new message. That night, I unplugged the phone. At that point, I tried to quit. I walked into my manager's office and said I was done. He barely looked up. "That's your choice," he muttered. Then he added, "Most people don't last beyond 6C. I asked him what he meant. He stood up and said, "Just leave your badge and go if you still can." That last line rattled me. I left the building and went straight to my apartment, packed up a few things and stayed with my sister for the weekend. I didn't check my email. I didn't answer calls. I even turned off my cell phone entirely. Sunday night around 3 a.m. I heard a knock at the door, not my sister's front door. My bedroom door. I was sleeping in her guest room. I sat up in bed. She was asleep in her own room with the door closed. The knock came again, 3 slow taps, then silence. I got up, opened the door, no one was there. But on the floor, perfectly centered in front of me, was a sticky note. Yellow, neatly written. It said, "Come back." I did. I don't know why. Maybe it was fear, maybe curiosity, maybe something else. But I returned on Monday morning. My badge still worked. My desk was untouched. The computer booted up normally. Everything looked the same except 6C. The man wasn't there. But his chair was turned again, this time not toward me but toward the hallway, facing the exit like it was waiting. The next days are a blur. Reports came in with names I didn't recognize. Emails were signed with initials no one used. I found a printout on my desk labeled Employee Exit Record 6C Proximity. It listed dates and names of former employees. Carla was on it, so was a guy named Darren who apparently worked in payroll 5 years ago. When I asked payroll about him, the girl said, "Darren, oh, he left a while ago." But her face went pale. She glanced at 6C when she said it. I think the cubicle does something to people, not instantly, but over time. It wears you down like it's hungry for your attention. The longer you notice it, the deeper you fall into its orbit, like a black hole in plain sight. I've stopped sleeping again. My reflection stares too long now. My monitor flickers at odd times. I hear typing when no one else is around. Sometimes I think I see movement in 6C just quick enough that I can't be sure. Last week I found a new file on my desktop, 6C access log txt. Inside were timestamps and screen captures from my computer, showing me staring at the cubicle, dated every day since I started. I asked HR for a transfer. They said my department had been absorbed and couldn't accommodate. I asked if I could switch floors. They said there's only one floor. I know that's not true. Today I came in and found my nameplate missing. In its place was a new one, A Mercer 6C. My cubicle has been reassigned. To 6C, I'm writing this from my phone in the stairwell. I haven't been able to leave yet. Every time I try, I get turned around. Elevators won't open. Stairs loop back. My badge doesn't scan anywhere else. I tried taking the emergency exit, set off the alarm, but no one came. It was silent, not even security. My laptop is still in the cubicle. The screen's glowing, waiting for me. I don't want to go back, but I know I will, because now 6C has my name, and no one reclaims a space from 6C. No one. If you ever find yourself working somewhere with a cubicle that no one wants, that no one talks about, don't sit near it. Don't look at it. Don't even ask questions. Just get out while you can, before it starts looking back. My name is Erica. In 2022, I was working as a mid-level project manager for a manufacturing company that produced industrial safety equipment. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well, $78K a year with annual bonuses that depended on hitting quarterly KPIs. The benefits were decent, the commute wasn't bad, and I liked my team. It was the kind of job you quietly hope to hold on to without much drama. That changed when our director of operations, Mark L., announced he was retiring. It was sudden. No warning, no transition plan, just a 3-sentence email and a half-hearted farewell lunch 2 days later. Upper management immediately posted the position internally. The job came with a huge pay bump, $105K a year, plus a car stipend and a corner office. I applied, so did 4 others. We were all told the same thing: HR and the executive team will interview everyone fairly. That was a lie. The first red flag came a week later when I was called in for my interview. It was scheduled for 2 p.m. in the HR conference room. I showed up on time, portfolio in hand, dressed professionally. The receptionist waved me through, but when I walked in, the room was empty, lights off, no chairs arranged, no one waiting for me. I stood there awkwardly for a minute, thinking maybe I had the wrong room. I pulled out my phone to double-check the calendar invite. I hadn't. Just then I heard voices behind me. 2 HR reps walked in mid-conversation, surprised to see me. One of them, Darla, looked mildly annoyed. "Oh right, Erica," she said, "you're here for the internal interview." She didn't invite me to sit. They didn't have printed questions. The whole thing felt rushed, disorganized. 10 minutes in, it became obvious they hadn't read my resume. "Now, what exactly do you do again?" Darla asked, flipping through my portfolio like it was a brochure she didn't remember picking up. I did my best to remain composed, but the questions were vague, bordering on meaningless. "How do you feel about leadership? What would you say is your management style?" No reference to my actual experience or performance reviews. They wrapped up in under 20 minutes. No one shook my hand. I walked out with that tight feeling in my stomach, the one you get when you already know the outcome but don't want to admit it. Over the next few days, I started hearing things. One of the candidates, Jason from logistics, had been bragging that he was a lock for the position. Not just to coworkers, but to vendors. A rep from a packaging firm I'd worked with for over a year casually asked me, "So what's it gonna be like working under Jason?" That felt premature. I asked around. No one else had heard back from HR. Interviews were supposedly still ongoing, so how did Jason already know? Then I noticed something else. Jason had started parking in Mark's old spot. It wasn't official, no placard, no memo, but there he was every morning pulling into that reserved space next to the side entrance. At first I thought it was coincidence. Maybe it was temporary, but it kept happening. I brought it up to my direct supervisor, Janet, during our weekly check-in. She looked uncomfortable. "Technically, it's not against the rules," she said, "but yeah, it's a bit presumptuous." She paused, then added, "Honestly, Erica, I'd start thinking about your options. There's a lot of movement happening at the top. Things are going to shift." That was her way of saying you're not getting the job. Still, something didn't sit right. The process felt off, too quiet, too secretive. I'd been through internal hires before, and even the ones that leaned political at least gave the illusion of fairness. This one felt rigged. I started documenting things, dates, conversations, discrepancies. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the information yet, but I wanted a record. Then I noticed Jason had access to folders on the shared drive he shouldn't have. The operations folder was restricted to managers and above, and I still had read-only access. But late one afternoon, while reviewing a supply chain report, I saw Jason's name pop up in the access log, editing a document I didn't even think he could see. That wasn't just suspicious. That was a breach of company policy. I took a screenshot and emailed it to myself. 3 days later, I was locked out of the system. It happened on a Friday. I came in, tried to log into my workstation, and got the generic credentials invalid error. I tried again, same result. I contacted it. They said my access had been temporarily suspended and that I needed to speak with HR. No warning, no explanation. I walked down to HR. The same receptionist gave me a forced smile and said, "Oh, hey, Erica, yeah, Darla will see you in a few minutes." It wasn't a few minutes, it was over 40. I sat there, phone in hand, heart racing. When I was finally called in, Darla closed the door behind me. No smile this time. "We received a report that you may have been accessing sensitive internal documents outside your scope," she said flatly. I blinked. "Excuse me," she slid a printed document across the table. It was a log of access timestamps, mine, but all to files I did have permission to view, and none of them were out of line. I tried to ask where the accusation came from, but she cut me off. "This isn't a formal investigation at this point. We just need to ensure all systems are secure." I was placed on temporary administrative leave, 2 weeks unpaid. At that point, I knew someone was setting me up, and I had a pretty good idea who. So I reached out to a friend in IT, someone I trusted who owed me a favor. I asked him hypothetically if someone could alter access logs on the backend without triggering alerts. He hesitated, then said, "Only if they have level 3 admin rights. That's usually reserved for high-level support or someone in operations." Mark had level 3 before he left, and when he retired, someone would have had to inherit those credentials. I asked him to check the access logs from 2 weeks prior, the day I saw Jason editing that file. He did. Jason's user ID was flagged, but it had been reattributed. To mine, someone had manually rewritten the metadata. I had him export the real logs and email them to a private address. I called Janet. She listened quietly as I explained everything, how I'd been set up, how Jason had access he shouldn't have, how HR seemed complicit, or at the very least willfully blind. She was silent for a while, then she said, "Meet me at the diner off the interstate tonight, 8 sharp." We met in a booth near the back. She looked exhausted, said she'd been suspecting something similar but didn't have proof. Apparently Jason had some kind of leverage over the VP of Finance, something involving expense reports and misallocated funds from the previous year. "They're grooming him," she said. "He's not qualified, everyone knows it, but they're covering each other's backs." She took the flash drive I handed her and promised she'd escalate it to legal discreetly. 3 days later, I was reinstated. No apology. Just a cold email saying my access had been restored and I was expected back Monday. Jason was never promoted. A month after my return, a company-wide memo went out. The operations director role was being filled by an external candidate. Jason quit within the week. No goodbye, no explanation, just stopped showing up. I never got the promotion either. I wasn't even interviewed a second time. The whole situation had made me radioactive, too many questions, too much attention, but I didn't care. Because I wasn't the one who got caught altering logs and forging access history. I stayed another year, then left for a competitor. Higher pay, remote work, cleaner culture. I never spoke to Jason again. But sometimes I still think about how far people will go for a promotion, not just to succeed, but to sabotage someone else just to get a title they haven't earned. And how sometimes the most dangerous thing in the workplace isn't the pressure or the politics. It's the person who knows the system better than you do. My name is Daniel. Back in 2019, I worked security at a large manufacturing plant that produced electrical components. The company ran 24/7, which meant we had rotating security teams to monitor badge access, perform perimeter sweeps, and do hourly internal rounds. I was part of the overnight crew 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It paid $19.75 an hour, with a shift differential for nights and full benefits. Not glamorous work, but the routine was steady and quiet. That's what I liked about it. At least it used to be. The facility had been around since the mid-70s, though only parts of it had seen upgrades. The newer production wings were modern, bright LED lighting, reinforced doors, working HVAC, but the original part of the plant, what we called Zone C, was another story. Zone C was like a time capsule. Peeling paint, humming old pipes, abandoned offices, and dusty storage full of outdated machinery and boxes no one wanted to deal with. It was the kind of place that always felt 5 degrees colder than the rest of the building, even in summer. Every shift, I'd badge in through the east gate, check in with dispatch, then begin my rounds starting with Zone C. I liked getting it out of the way early. It was dim, empty, and had a weird energy to it, but I never saw anything too strange until one night late October. At exactly 2:39 a.m., an unauthorized access alarm went off in the south corridor of Zone C. I remember it precisely because I was just finishing up my sweep of the catwalk above the storage area when the beeping began. It echoed off the walls, sharp and urgent. I checked my scanner, nothing. No one badged in. I radioed dispatch. Zone C South Corridor unauthorized access alert. No ID logged, investigating. Dispatch responded that they hadn't seen any badge pings on their end either. When I arrived at the door, it was locked. No signs of damage, still secure. The alarm continued beeping for another few seconds, then stopped on its own. That's what stuck with me. Usually I'd have to reset it manually, but it shut itself off. I logged it as a system error and moved on. 2 nights later, same thing. Same door, same time, 2:40 a.m. this time. Alarm, no access logs, no signs of tampering. I brought it up to my supervisor. He looked it up, but nothing appeared out of place in the system. Might just be sensor drift, he said. We've had issues in Zone C before. I'll put in a ticket. The week that followed made me start keeping a notebook. 5 nights out of 7, I got the exact same alarm from the same location, always between 2:38 and 2:41 a.m. I started dreading that part of my rounds. It didn't help that Zone C had terrible lighting. Some of the old fluorescent tubes still flickered, and when the HVAC kicked on, the ducts would rattle like footsteps above you. Then came the shadow. It was about 2:42 a.m. I was turning the corner near the old locker rooms, flashlight sweeping side to side, when I saw something near the emergency exit. It was a figure, male, maybe 510, wearing what looked like a faded gray jumpsuit and an orange safety vest. Just standing there, I froze. "Sir, this area is restricted. You'll need to come with me." No response. I stepped forward and the figure moved just slightly before vanishing behind a support beam. I rounded the corner within seconds. Nothing. The hallway was empty, no open doors, no noise, but the air had dropped in temperature, cold enough to see my breath. I didn't report the sighting, not yet. What would I even say? I saw a man who disappeared. I told myself it could have been fatigue, maybe even a trick of the shadows, but deep down I knew something was off. 2 nights later, I talked to Todd, one of the older guards on the team. He'd been there since '98. I asked him, "Hey, has anything weird ever happened in Zone C?" He gave me a long look. "You see something?" I hesitated. "Just strange alarms, maybe a person." He nodded slowly. "You saw the guy in the vest, didn't you?" My blood went cold. I asked what he meant. Todd looked around and then leaned in. That hallway's had issues for years. Guys have heard voices, seen shadows. Back in the early 2000s, one of the guards quit mid-shift after hearing someone screaming behind a locked door, said it wasn't human, never came back. I asked why the company hadn't done anything. "Because there's no proof," Todd said. "They blame it on bad wiring or sensor failures. You won't find anything in writing, but the story goes there was a fire back in '85. Maintenance guy was doing repairs on a junction box in Zone C during 3rd shift. The system glitched and locked the fire doors. He was trapped, burned alive near the South Corridor emergency exit. His body wasn't found until morning. After that conversation, I stopped taking my rounds lightly. I carried an extra flashlight, checked over my shoulder more than once. And then came the night my body cam picked something up. We were all required to wear them for liability reasons. Footage synced to the central server at the end of each shift. That night around 2:41 a.m. I was walking through Zone C when the static on my radio cut in. I paused, rewound the cam audio at dispatch later and heard it clearly, a faint whisper, "Help me." That's all, just 2 words, but it didn't come from me. I hadn't spoken at that point. I hadn't even noticed it in real time. I played it for my supervisor. He looked uncomfortable. Said maybe it was audio feedback. He told me to send the file to it and not worry about it. 3 days later, we were told that all body cams would be replaced and usage suspended due to firmware issues. Coincidence? I don't think so. The final straw came a few weeks later. It was my last shift before scheduled vacation. I was doing my last Zone C sweep around 4 a.m. The alarms hadn't gone off that night. I thought maybe things had settled down. I rounded the south corridor and that's when I saw him again, this time closer. He was facing the door, hunched, his back to me, same jumpsuit, same vest, only now I could hear something, a kind of wet, ragged breathing. I called out, "Sir." Slowly he turned, his face God. His skin was charred, blackened, melted. His eyes were hollow. He raised one hand, fingers twisted like burned wires, and pointed at the exit door. Then he vanished, no smoke, no blink, just gone. I ran, didn't stop until I reached the security hub. I was shaking so badly I couldn't even clock out properly. I called out sick the next night, then again the next week. Eventually, I put in my notice, said I had family matters out of state. They didn't ask questions. Months later, I talked to someone who replaced me on night shift. I didn't mention specifics, just asked, "How's Zone C treating you?" He laughed nervously. "Man, I don't go in there unless I have to. Something's wrong with that place. Last week I heard someone whisper my name. I swear to God. I don't work security anymore. Took an admin job instead. Quieter, fewer shadows, but I still think about Zone C, that man in the vest, trapped, forgotten. I wonder if anyone's ever tried to help him, or if he's just waiting for anyone to finally open that door. I still have my old radio. It's buried in a box in my closet. No batteries, long dead, but sometimes, just sometimes, I'll hear a faint crackle at exactly 2:41 a.m., and I don't check it anymore." My name is Amy. I used to work for a medium-sized marketing firm on the 6th floor of an old high-rise in downtown Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked my team, and the pay was decent. I started as a junior copywriter fresh out of college, earning $48K a year with hopes of working my way up to creative lead someday. The office had all the typical corporate charm: fluorescent lighting that buzzed overhead, temperamental printers, squeaky swivel chairs, and communal coffee that tasted like burnt rubber no matter who brewed it. But there was something about Suite 609 that felt wrong, off somehow, like the air was heavier there than anywhere else in the building. Most people brushed it off as quirks of an aging structure, but over time the signs became harder to ignore. It started small. Weird electrical issues. My monitor would flicker randomly, even though it swore nothing was wrong. Sometimes my mouse would move by itself, just a slow drag across the screen like someone was testing the sensitivity. My keyboard would randomly lock up and then start working again, almost like it was deciding whether to let me keep typing. Shared documents would occasionally update themselves, lines of copy appearing and disappearing without version control catching it. Always the same eerie phrase inserted into my drafts: "He still waits." I assumed it was a prank, maybe someone on the team being clever or trying to mess with the new girl. But it kept happening, always late at night, always the same phrasing. No one ever claimed responsibility. One night I stayed late to meet a client deadline. It was just after 9 p.m. Everyone else had gone home, and I was trying to knock out the last of a product description rewrite. I thought I was alone until I heard typing. At first, I figured it was one of the graphic designers pulling an all-nighter, but when I walked over to their desks, the lights were off. The typing stopped as I got closer. I checked every cubicle. No one. When I returned to my desk, my heart dropped. A message had been typed onto my screen in a blank document: "Don't stay late." I didn't even bother shutting down. I closed my laptop, grabbed my bag, and left immediately. The next morning, I told my manager, James. He laughed and said the office had some history. That back in the early 2000s, a junior associate named Ben had a breakdown. He was ambitious, obsessive. Rumor was he worked himself to death, quite literally. He was found at his desk one morning, slumped over the keyboard, heart failure, only 28 years old. "Suite 609 has ghosts," James said with a grin. "All the bad ideas go there to die," except it wasn't funny. Not to me. I started having nightmares. I'd dream of typing endlessly, my fingers bleeding onto the keyboard. A tall man standing behind me, silent, just watching. I never saw his face, but I knew it was Ben or whatever was left of him. Some mornings I'd come in to find every file on my desktop deleted. It couldn't explain it. They said the logs didn't show any remote access or unusual activity, but there would always be one new file left behind, untitled, docx. Inside, a single sentence: "He's waiting for you." Things escalated fast after that. Desks started getting rearranged overnight. Once I came in to find my chair replaced with an older, dust-covered one from storage, something that hadn't been used in years. Sticky notes with messages I didn't write appeared on my monitor. "Clock out. He watches from the glass. Ben never left." My coworkers noticed the weird vibe too. Karen from HR said she always felt cold drafts near the elevator, even in summer. Josh from sales swore he saw someone walk into the conference room after hours, but when he checked, it was empty. One evening, we had a client pitch that ran late. The whole team stayed behind. Around 8:30 p.m., the lights in the break room started flickering. Then we heard the sound of footsteps packing above us, only we were on the top floor. James called building maintenance, who said no one else was in the building. Cameras confirmed it, no movement, no access logs, just us. After that, no one wanted to stay past 6 p.m., but deadlines don't care about hauntings. I had to prep for a product launch, so I stayed behind one Friday night. I kept the lights bright, played music on my headphones, tried to stay focused. But the tension in the air was different, thicker, like the room itself was holding its breath. Around 11 p.m., the office printer turned on by itself. It started printing page after page, even though I hadn't sent anything. I walked over and picked up the papers. They were all blank except the last one. It said, "You're in his seat." That was it. I packed up and left, drove straight to my apartment and cried. I took a sick day the following Monday. When I returned, James asked to see me. He looked pale, serious. Said someone had been accessing the building after hours using my security badge. Said the cameras caught the main office door opening at 3:06 a.m. on Saturday, but no one ever showed up on footage, just the door opening, lights flickering. Motion sensors going off in suite 609. I canceled my badge immediately. Still, the messages didn't stop. I started getting emails from a company address that didn't exist in the system anymore. Ben Thompson at company.com. Subject lines like, "I can't rest," "You replaced me," "Finish what I started." The emails had no body text, just the subject line, always sent at 2:47 a.m. It insisted it was a spoofed address, probably a phishing attempt, nothing they could do. I didn't care anymore. I started applying to other jobs. I didn't even care about the pay cut, I just needed out. My final week, I was cleaning out my desk when I found a notebook that wasn't mine. It was old, leather-bound, the kind you'd expect to find in a library archive. Inside were pages and pages of ideas for ad campaigns. Half-baked slogans, rough sketches, media plans, some of it looked decades old. The last page said, "This is the campaign that will free me. Launch it and I'll leave." I showed it to James. He flipped through it, confused, said none of it made sense, said the ideas were terrible. "If this is your attempt to get a promotion, Amy, it's not working." I left the notebook on his desk. The next day, James didn't show up for work. They found him in the stairwell, collapsed, heart attack. Same age Ben was when he died. I didn't go back after that. I emailed HR my resignation and left my laptop at the front desk. I didn't want to set foot in suite 609 ever again. But even now, months later, I get notifications from our old project management system. Assignments added to my name. Tasks due at 3:06 a.m. I don't click them, and I don't answer emails from unknown senders. But late at night, when I'm working alone at my new job, especially if I stay past 9, I still glance at the glass behind me, just in case he's watching.